I first paddled on the Allagash 26 years ago, and I've been coming on it almost every year. Well, I think the Allagash is a really special river because of the history from the Native American people in Maine, the logging history, the state of Maine having it be the Allagash Wilderness Waterway and keeping it protected. There's a corridor like right on either side of the river so people can paddle it and it feels the same as it would have hundreds of years ago. In 2016 will be the 50th anniversary of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway being created. Is really something to celebrate because it's a very special thing that the state of Maine has done so that so many people can enjoy it. Our business is called Mahoosuc Guide Service. We have done many trips on the Allagash because it's a beautiful river, but it also has quite a reputation. People have heard about it, and so people want to do that trip.
The reason I wanted to take a trip on the Allagash was I'd never done it before, and I really wanted to explore more of northern Maine. Polly was a friend of mine, and I was talking to her about it, and I said, definitely, let's do it. And it'd been such a busy summer, I thought this is a perfect chance to get away and just clear my head.
I've long wanted to do it. I worked as a ranger at Baxter Park and am familiar with this area somewhat, but I had never gotten up on the river. To experience the rhythm of the river and to be outdoors and experiencing a long trip where you're on the river and camping and being with other people.
It's been on my bucket list, and I can't tell you how it got there. I just always knew the Allagash was a wild and scenic river, and I knew I always wanted to do it.
Well, if you live in Maine, they always ask you, have you done the Allagash? And we hadn't done it yet, so it was time to do the Allagash.
We know Bill Townsend, who was very involved way back when to protect the Allagash waterway. And it's always been a fascinating idea of the wilderness that's really relatively close when you think about it. You don't have to fly around the world to get to a wilderness area.
I like the wilderness aspect of it, being out in the woods and out in the bush, being able to feel independent and self-reliant kind of out there.
My first paddle of the Allagash was a solo paddle. I was probably 50 years old at that time, and I was looking for ways to grow in strength and ways to find time for reflection and writing. So the Allagash trip seemed like a perfect way to be on my own for a couple of weeks.
When I become a Maine guide, I would like to at least do a couple of trips a year on the Allagash, just, to show people how wonderful this river is.
The high points of this trip have really just been the pristine beauty that's surrounding us every day, all day long. Everything from seeing the fog rise off the river in the morning to watching the sun set and seeing a bald eagle fly across the river and the cedar waxwing birds flying out to catch insects over the river.
Special aspects of the Allagash or the wildlife. When you're on the Allagash, the variety of wildlife that you get to see daily is phenomenal.
The moose sightings were amazing. 2 sightings of a mother moose with young was great.
Even all of the lifelong Maine residents are thrilled to see a moose. It's just a really special thing. And, as a wildlife biologist, I just like seeing wildlife in their native environment. Moose in particular seemed unafraid of us. They just looked up when we paddled by and slowly moseyed off. So that sort of surprised me. Just seeing the bald eagles and the great blue herons and the mergansers doing what they do in the natural world.
The first night there was always the sound of the loons because we were more or less on a lake. The loons have disappeared since we got into the river portion of the trip. We've seen great blue herons, some osprey, lots of eagles, teeter-totters, blue jays, kingfishers, little brown birds, cedar waxwings.
You know, it's a lot of evergreens along the river that we've noticed in the last couple of days, and we've started to come into some different types of trees as we've gotten further north.
Well, I've always been sort of excited by the northern boreal forest, so I had noticed the change in trees from the white spruce to the black spruce.
We've identified trees. We've even seen some alder trees that have been gnawed down by beaver. Some real familiar things, and of course all the wonderful pine trees, and we even saw a stand of elm trees, which was really surprising to us. You wouldn't expect that the elm would have been out in the middle of a wilderness area, but there it was.
And the Allagash Falls is just a beautiful falls that you get to enjoy, and there's no roads to it, so it makes it more special to me.
Approaching Allagash Falls, we beached the canoes and then hiked the portage path above and also around the falls, hearing their roar get louder and louder as we got closer and closer. The thundering waters of the Allagash Falls drop, I think, about 40 feet, yet we were able to swim in the quiet waters below the falls, and the beach was a good place for lunch and a nap and for Jason's reading to us.
Well, today we were really fortunate to have Jason read to us and talk about his heritage, and read from a book called The Penobscot Man, I believe. And it was very nice to be next to the falls, sitting in a group, listening to Jason just talk about his heritage and his family and the stories.
The high points. Well, almost everything, because I've never really done it before. It's my first river trip.
Well, the high point of this trip, I guess, for me was the mixture of people we had. The river and the woods were the point of the trip, of course, but what made this trip special was the people. They ranged in an age from 15 years old to people like me in their 70s, and then in between, and New York City urbanites like me to farmers from Vermont.
One was paddling with Jason, the Native American Penobscot. What I learned paddling in his bow for a whole day was just how much he knows about the history of this area, how dedicated he is to learning the skills of the tribal history and the tribal traditions, and the outdoor experience that involves.
And the stories that Bonnie has shared with us from various readings have been very magical. She does have that spirit of bringing the whole woods into words. You can feel it, but it's also good to hear it in words.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Watch now how I start the day in happiness, in kindness.
Would definitely include skills that I have learned for canoeing, as far as strokes and dealing with challenges that come up on the river, and also how to pack a canoe and how to work together.
The state of Maine established campgrounds along the river where people must camp so they don't destroy the wilderness by camping at any and every spot along the river. The campgrounds are spacious, they're open, they have a nice large table, a crossbar to support a tarp in rainy weather, a fire ring. They're surrounded by the forest. Fallen trees and branches provide wood for the cooking fires.
I'm able to help out people, and it's a great time to practice my bushcraft skills. I've been able to feel and enjoy the beauty of the wood canvas as I'm paddling. I feel like it's a much more traditional experience.
I really appreciated our stops at several historic sites. The first was the old log cabin at the Michaud Farm, which is now a ranger station. And the second was the former Moore's farmhouse, which is being turned into a visitor information center. At Cunliffe Depot, we saw the abandoned and broken pieces of equipment in the forest scattered all around, including the steam-powered tractors, the Lombard log haulers that pulled tons of tree trunks during the winter months.
In just 24 hours, he had the first crude drawings for the most famous of all lumbering inventions, the Lombard steam log hauler. Lombard had no idea that his basic idea of the caterpillar tread was to mother the military tank and the farm tractor. But once he had constructed a wooden working model at the pattern shop of the Waterville Ironworks, he realized he had something. Not only new for the woods, but new under the sun.
The biggest challenges definitely have been learning to read the river. I enjoyed the day that we had a long day and it was a lot of work. It was interesting to try to get into the rhythm of paddling for that long.
To be able to paddle downriver and head north, which is so different from most every other river that you paddle.
What's interesting is the river, there's parts of it that are very shallow and then it's also very deep. And so it's not the same anywhere along the river. It changes a lot. And so you sometimes can sort of get lulled into just being on the river, and then all of a sudden you realize you need to take your attention and pay attention to what you're doing, because you don't want to hit any of those rocks.
And I like the challenge of there's a little bit of rapids and rips along the way for you have to really be on your toes, watching which way to go. And we use, when I paddle, I'm always actually in a wood canvas canoe. So you have to really, do a lot of poling and make sure you don't hit any rocks. And I like that challenge on the Allagash that some rivers don't have. It's just flat paddling. Yeah, sometimes the water level on the Allagash fluctuates depending on the time of year and how much rain we've had. So when it's higher water, you can just paddle straight on through. You don't see any rocks, and it's really easy. When the water drops, if we haven't had rain or certain times of the year, then it's a very rocky river. So that creates, a lot of challenges of getting down the river without scraping rocks. And then being in a wood canvas canoe, you don't want to do that, of course. So it makes it more challenging. But in all water levels, it's really a beautiful river, and
It's much more pleasant to be out here when it's sunny and warm because you can go for a swim. And I think that's one of the fun things I liked to do is make sure you get in the water, not always being on top of it, but to get in the water and feel that current. And then you really realize how strong the current is in a few places. It's a very different feel in the canoe. You're going downstream, but when you get out of the water and try to walk against it, you realize, wow, there is a lot of power in this water here.
Paddle strength is right in here. And then when you recover, you want to knife through the air.
Yeah, we take all kinds of people on our canoe trips, even on the Allagash, and beginners, people that have had some experience, and we go over instructions so they learn.
There's lots of ways of getting down a river. Sometimes you portage around the rock, the rocky places. Sometimes you can wade it, you can line it, you can pole it, you can shoot through and bump your way down.
Well, what I've learned from the fellow paddlers, the person in the bow with me when I was in the stern has been Bonnie, who's been doing this for years. So she's continually pointing out, first of all, if I'm paddling right, my stroke technique, and then today we're working a lot on making turns and working together to get around rocks and through the rapids, which was really quite fun.
Learning by experience, you can't beat it. You can hear the words and then putting it together and to do it when you need to do it, that's really cool.
Some people want to learn how to pole, which is a really neat thing to do, and it's kind of not a lot of people do it anymore. So it's a really fun way to travel down the river or up the river, but in shallow water. You can really maneuver your canoe and put it right where you want it so you're not hitting rocks. And it's just a great thing to expose people to and teach them.
Well, poling is just really a way of going down the river when the water is so shallow that you keep hitting, you would otherwise hit the bottom of your paddle, and most poles have some kind of a metal tip on them so that they don't splinter. And you can go upstream, downstream. You can stop easier with a pole, but it's just another way of maneuvering a canoe.
Poling is a skill that is largely lost. Most people don't have the opportunity to learn it and don't know how to do it. But because of the low water, we needed to be able to do it, and so we practiced poling below the remains of Long Lake Dam. We had to portage around the dam, and there was a slackwater place below the dam, and then some rips after that were ideal for learning. And we took the opportunity to pick up a skill, just a rudimentary skill on my part, but a skill that is nearly lost.
This was my first time pulling at all, and so I was really able to learn how to pull and figure that out.
I've definitely learned to pole more proficiently. I will go closer to the rocks where before I would adjust way ahead of time, and I feel more confident to just snub up and to turn.
Learning to pole, which was really quite exciting. Taking a spill when the pole got caught under the boat and I went flying out. That was actually quite fun too.
Well, the food's fabulous. I mean, the food has to make the trip.
I was so impressed by how Polly and Jason and Grant and Sandy cooked breakfast and dinner over a wood fire. And these included giant blueberry pancakes and bacon and eggs and sausage and cereals, all for breakfast, to making desserts like the biscuits for strawberry shortcake at dinner. And the hot coffee and tea and cocoa that helped warm us up on the chilly mornings and evenings. And I was impressed too by how everyone in the group also pitched in to help prepare these meals. So there really was a lot of teamwork involved.
And I look forward to dinners every night in camp.
I have, of course, loved every meal. I think there's always a choice of vegetables, and I love vegetables. There's usually a meat course as well, fish or pork chops last night.
The food that wowed me the most was the pork chops, which were, I don't know if Polly grew them or she bought them on a farm right nearby, but it was just, incredible taste.
The desserts are my favorite. So let's see, I guess tonight we're having pineapple upside down cake.
My favorite one was actually the chocolate chip cookies that turned into a chocolate chip cake.
So I don't think I eat as well at home as I have on this trip. Would really expect nothing less from Mahoosuc Guide Service and Polly, but it's just impressive the effort that goes into making us delicious meals.
My special challenge is it will end and I'll have to go back to my everyday life.
I like to canoe, and I like to just be out in the woods.
I never get tired of being on the river. Like some rivers you might do 1 or 2 times and then be, okay, I've done that, I want to go somewhere else. But the river's always changing depending on the water level, depending on the weather, the group. I've been bringing people here for many years, and I just like sharing the experience with them.
I don't think I really would change anything. And that's the thing about Polly too, that we did sort of change something midstream with the trip because the water getting lower than she anticipated. So it's great just to have that flexibility and fluidity.
Well, I expected it to be wild, and it is. It's pristine, it's serene, it's peaceful. It's just a wonderful experience to be away from all the usual humdrum of life and to be in a place that's just a wonderful paradise.
The river is just beautiful, and it's quiet.
You canoe on a little boat built for two. Can you canoe? I'll be your captain and your crew. Can you canoe if there's nothing better to do? I wanna float down the river with you. I'll take the bow, brother. You can take the stern. when to turn. Let's just keep it simple, we all need a friend in this current moment, instead of looking around the bend. Can you canoe on a little boat built for two? Can you canoe? I'll be your captain and your crew. Can you canoe if there's nothing better to do? I wanna float down a river with you. I wanna float